There's a lot of advice out there, right? And the conventional advice says, uh, we're taught to approach it like this: figure out what you want, get clear on your purpose, and then take aligned action. But in reality, that formula keeps a lot of people stuck because the truth is, clarity, again, doesn't usually come before movement. It comes through movement, through participation, through showing up before everything actually makes sense. And it's through that being that everything begins to align. People report the highest levels of meaning and fulfillment not when they're chasing some sort of goal or trying to define their identities, but when they're actually fully absorbed in what they're doing and what they're creating. Now, there's this book called Flow. I'm going to butcher this guy's name. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. I don't know how to say his name, but he wrote this book called Flow, The Psychology of Flow. And he says that when your attention is anchored in the moment and your engagement will create its own momentum. We actually are waiting for momentum to magically appear and take us somewhere. But it's through that engagement where that momentum begins to be fueled. But there's a bit of a nuance here. Flow, when you're in flow, it does not require a master plan. It doesn't require you to know where it's all going. It's like an artist on a canvas. Some artists don't know what they're going to create, right? They just kind of let the paint and the brush meet and the canvas, and voila, they create something. And so, this whole journey, what it requires most of all is presence and a willingness, right? And so, one of the things that I was talking to my client about, we had this exact conversation, and he's just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, be present. Like, you have a whole family in his circumstance. How do you just be present with what is currently in front of you? Because the minute that we start chasing something else, we're either fully moving forward, time traveling into the present, or we're actually time traveling backwards. So we're actually not rooted. We're not seeing what is already in front of us, right? And and so conventional advice falls short of that. It tells you to wait until you're certain, to act only once you have a fully defined vision. But what that creates psychologically is paralysis. I know that a lot, especially when like there's a thing I want to create and I don't know quite sure, or there's like this fear in there, and I get stuck in the paralysis. So usually for me, I'm like, I need more information. I gotta gather more information. I'm a data hoarder. And the more information I have, the more likely then I'll feel like I can take action. But all that's doing is like trying to regulate my nervous system. And so when we're in that paralysis, it's your nervous system that has learned that safety comes from control. We're just trying to control the outcome. And so you'll keep waiting for a level of clarity that never arrives, especially not in the way that you think it arrives, because you're thinking it needs to look a certain way. And so it might come, but you missed it because there's this perception or perspective that you have of what it's supposed to look like. And so we're not here to chase purpose. We're building a life that creates the conditions for it to emerge. And a lot of people miss that. We want a thing, but we're not creating the conditions for the thing to actually sprout, right? And you could think about this like, let's say if you're, trying to lose weight, part of this process is like you have to clear out your fridge of any temptations, right? You have to create the conditions of the environment for you to actually, go through that journey. And and we miss that point. And so a lot of this starts by letting go of the idea that you need to know in order to begin. You don't need to see the whole picture. You don't. That's just fear telling you that you do. You just need to become someone who's in relationship with what's here. And that's going to make sense as we continue. So here's what often goes unspoken when you stop chasing purpose. And if this is landing, definitely let me know in the chat, or if you're part of the replay gang, let me know in the comments. So when you stop chasing purpose, you're no longer striving, but you're still wired to expect direction from pressure, from urgency, or from some sort of outcome. Because if I get the outcome, then I know, all right, I'm going in the right direction, right? And without those familiar drivers, you might start questioning everything if that's not happening. Am I doing enough? Am I still growing? What's guiding me now? And so often a lot of people think like this is a crisis that's about to happen. And it's not necessarily a crisis, it's just an interruption in the process because your system doesn't quite know how to respond yet, your nervous system, because the usual motivators, achievement, goals, validation, aren't calling the shots anymore. And so internally, this can actually feel like a slowdown. And for us, especially if you are part of this sort of matrix conditioning, any kind of slowdown is going to feel like a threat. It's going to overwhelm you because we're not a society that likes to slow down. We're usually not a society that likes to sit still. Okay. Stillness feels like a threat because too much space on our calendars, man, all these limiting beliefs starts to pop up, right? So behaviorally, it might look like hesitation or disengagement, but underneath it, there's something else that's trying to come through, a different way of organizing your life. So integration begins when you stop outsourcing your momentum, right? I need X to happen in order for me to feel Y, right? And so you start asking different questions, not what's the next big thing, right? But what feels most authentic to me right now? What feels most authentic to me? Not how do I prove I'm on the right track or on track, whatever that means to you, but what's worth staying in relationship, in connection with, even if no one sees it. Because a lot of the things that we do is because performance. And I'll be weaving that in and out through this live, but we perform a lot. And I know that really well because that was my whole thing, being an immigrant coming to this country and having to perform and not be a quote unquote stereotype that was assumed by where I came from, and hearing it from my family and having to basically be a certain way so that I don't fall into a certain kind of stereotype, right? Having an accent, all those things. And so we have been taught to perform a certain way. So when we go outside, we leave the house, we put on a certain kind of mask, right? And then when we put enough masks, we actually don't know who we are. And I have these conversations with my clients because often they're like, I don't know what my purpose is. I'm like, but do you even know who you are? Like, it's hard for you to even connect to a thing called purpose, which even the word sounds daunting, right? Because it feels like the minute I find this purpose, this thing, like the rest of my life will be saved. Like everything will make sense. There'll be no more pain, no more suffering, and everything's just going to come together. And that's a whole lot of pressure. Whole lot of pressure. My cousin's home, so she's about to run through this and she's going to start talking to me like I'm available to chat. So you'll see that happen in a minute. Anyway, um, where was I? Yeah. So, what's worth staying in relationship with, even if no one sees it. And so this isn't about detaching. It's about building a new kind of rhythm, one that's guided by internal orientation, values, presence, and self-honesty. And what I mean by internal orientation, I'm talking about coherence, right? When we are incoherent with ourselves, that means everything, mind, body, spirit, all that is in alignment. There's nothing that's kind of out, there's nothing that's fractured. Because often what happens is that we, parts of ourselves over here, parts of ourselves over there, and we're just all over the place. But when we're coherent, it's clear. The channel is very clear. And so how do you actually rebuild from here without falling back into old patterns or waiting for certainty to arrive? Okay, and so that's where we're going next. Let me check the chat. All right, Toy says I definitely get stuck. Gotta move this right here, trying to figure out all the things before starting. Yeah, it's very common. We all do that because what we're actually trying to do, we're just trying to regulate our nervous systems. We're feeling overwhelmed, we're feeling fear, we're feeling all types of feelings that we're not actually naming. So we do all these kinds of things to help us feel at ease. And so what you're actually saying, Toya, is that I'm trying to feel at ease. I'm trying to feel a sense of safety before I start. And so once we figure out what that is or what's driving that, you won't need to do that anymore. All right. So